They've got to stand strong. And most of the messaging now most of the public pressure has to be directed toward the House.
So, Ron, I want to jump in and go back to something you and Elon were discussing earlier, just because I think it gets to the strategy of where do we go from here in Ukraine. And, it's always challenging to psychoanalyze people, but I think much of what is going on with Ukraine policy is you're trying to insulate neocons and liberal internationalists in the Biden administration from actually dealing with the consequences of their decisions. And so if you just go back to sort of 8, 9, 10 months ago, the consensus in the Biden administration, I spoke about this privately with Secretary Blinken, was we are going to put the Russians all the way back to the 1991 borders. The counteroffensive is going to be wildly successful, and that's what we're trying to do. Of course, that didn't pan out. So now what is their argument for the strategy? The argument for the strategy is that if we throw enough money and resources and weapons at Ukraine, they will somehow reach a point where the Russians are tired of fighting and will come to the negotiating table. And of course, we've learned pretty conclusively that the Russians were at the negotiating table in April of 2022 when Blinken and Boris Johnson refused to negotiate with them. So we're witnessing the complete collapse of America's strategic capacity in the defense world. I mean, can you imagine in World War II if you had a president of the United States saying, we just want to throw weapons at an ally until hopefully maybe someday they can get their enemies to negotiate with them? It's shocking that's where we are. And it's why, frankly, I agree with Vivek that it's not just diminishing returns. We're at the point of negative returns with money spent on Ukraine. I am sort of okay with saying no to both Ukraine, yes to the border. I recognize that we have to have some negotiation here, but we really have to be honest about how insane this policy is and completely divorced from strategic capacity. If your explicit strategy is wait Vladimir Putin out until he comes to the negotiating table, when you are outmatched in manpower and weaponry, you're clinically insane.